Why a few people here? All right. As I continue to admit new people here, I'll just kind of give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover today. As you know, we do these calls quite often. The goal is to make ourselves available, to have an open Q&A. If you have questions or challenges or whatever it might be, you can share with us. If you want to just go ahead and put it in the chat while I'm talking, I can get to them kind of real time. I do have kind of a brief agenda today to kind of walk through all the new functionality and new features that we've released over the last 30 to 60 days. And so part of the goal today is to kind of showcase some of that. Some of it will be familiar, but some of it will be new to you. And just to talk a little bit about what these new features allow you to do and some of the use cases that we've been using them in when it comes to deploying AI agents. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, we'll do a little show and tell. Obviously, it's going to be slightly technical, but not too technical. And just kind of walk you through all the components of what we see happening out there in the field as we deploy AI agents with companies across CSI. For those who are new and they don't know anything about us, I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Rich Swire. I'm the founder of raia. raia was founded out of the venture group within CSI a few years ago. The goal being that when the venture group was started by Mark Leonard and Don over at Topicus, the goal was primarily to encourage entrepreneurs within CSI who had good ideas that had traction through initiatives to launch companies. And so it's relatively a unique aspect of CSI. Not many people know about it, but it's something that I always try to promote because as an entrepreneur, I think it's extraordinarily cool that CSI has supports that entrepreneurial spirit. So when we founded raia, we had a mission in mind. The primary mission was to help companies look at AI differently, especially vertical market software companies, because obviously 3 years ago it was very confusing. It was hard to understand what was down the road, how it was going to affect the software companies, how we would embrace it to make it an opportunity. And so one of the things that we saw as a thesis 3 years ago was that we wanted to enable our companies within CSI to be able to embrace and look at AI agents as a way to not only increase productivity internally, but also how they can expand their products. So raia was born 3 years ago out of a portfolio primarily with the idea of helping save money and increase productivity. And it ended up being something more obviously bigger than that. Ended up being something that we could showcase across all the BUs, across all the operating groups as a way to not only advance our companies as a whole, but also extend it out to our the BU's customers, right? So when we think about the future, we think about how AI is not only going to impact us as businesses, but our customers as well. So the first thing I want to start off with is just to kind of give an overview of how we see the world. It's going to take 5 minutes, but it's worthwhile. I actually put together a little bit of a couple of pictures here just to make it more visual. And then I'm going to get into the show and tell of the features. But I wanted to make sure again that a lot of people are new here, and I wanted to just make sure that we're had the opportunity to get everybody on the same page as far as how we see the world and how raia, what makes raia unique in the sense of how you're looking at AI. And just give me 2 seconds because we've hit our maximum capacity here. So I'm gonna have to kick off some note takers. I'm kicking out AI to get some humans in this call here. So let me just give me a second here. I wasn't planning on having this many people, so that's exciting, but it's also kind of a nightmare to manage here. Let me just bear with me while I get people on here. All right. All right, so first thing I want to showcase here, I'm going to share my screen, is I put together some visuals, and obviously, I love Claude Code, so I like to kind of do as much as I can to demonstrate the power of AI, even if it's not our own software. But as you know or may know, we've been traveling the country or the world, quite honestly, to essentially pull out this playbook that we've seen we've had a lot of success with CSI companies as we've kind of traveled from city to city. And the playbook is really kind of it's a thing that I think most people are trying to think about how to approach AI, specifically outside of just development, beyond the AI DLC, but into the agentic world. And so I kind of put together, and this kind of mirrors our playbook here. It kind of gives you some visuals, but I think it helps understand where we're coming from before we get into the showcasing some of the product features. So the first thing I'd like to kind of talk about is the importance of centralizing intelligence. So what we've seen as we've kind of talked to 500-600 BUs across CSI Topicus is that as you start to use tools, and these different people within your company are using tools, you can sense a little bit of the chaos because there's not much of a idea of what they're using it for, what the output is, and obviously now you're starting to get those token bills. And so this kind of graphic here demonstrates kind of what we're trying to achieve by centralizing intelligence into agents by using our platform. And so as you kind of slide here, what the whole goal here is to show is if you can start to centralize your best use cases, right? You might have a lot of great innovation happening on the edge of your business, right? In these tools, whether it be Claude, OpenAI, ChatGPT, whatever it might be. But the key is to capture those prompts, capture those kind of beginnings of an agent, and start to centralize it into a framework, into a control plane that is easier to monitor and obviously easier to secure and become compliant, but also share across your organization. So the first thing I always talk about when we talk about tools versus agents is how do you centralize your intelligence and launch agents that can not just benefit one person, but benefit your entire company. And so our job, and we're going to talk a little bit about this today, is how do you have all this AI activity, you have all this usage, and you have the token bill to prove it, but how do you consolidate that into what I would consider your best of breed agents to be able to scale, but also to be able to reduce your cost and reduce your risk, and tie that to a better outcome, right? And again, tools aren't bad. It's just that there has to be some pathway to take what's happening on the edge of your business and centralize it so you can kind of leverage that. The second thing we always talk about is owning everything between the user and the model. And so this was a mission of raia to bring to CSI. As a CSI-owned company, we are trying to be your control plane and trying to show you the way of controlling and having less vendor dependence. And so when you think about today, you're getting approached by all these different vendors to buy everything around AI, whether it be, layers between on the service layer, on the cloud layer, or even maybe your SaaS companies coming at you trying to sell you AI that's baked into their SaaS, to increase their licensing fees or increase their seat licenses. And so you end up basically distributing, again, all your AI to these third parties, and you're avoiding the part of basically centralizing this. So what this graph is kind of showing you is what happens when you become more vendor independent and you start to bring all that AI internally. and you are the owner of the control plane, and you are the owner of your data, your agents, your workflow, and your training. And you basically treat those other parties as just data providers that you need to access through MCP or through an API. And so this transition is critical in our mind, getting and avoiding the vendor lock-in and avoiding putting yourself in a situation where you're outsourcing your intelligence. And someday they're going to ultimately, obviously, going to pay a price, but more importantly, which gets expensive because they're going to continue to find ways of charging you more and more money for it. But worse is that you won't have control over it, and you also lose flexibility. I think once you start deploying AI, you start to realize that you need more flexibility when it comes to what you want to achieve with your agents. So a SaaS provider like Salesforce or Zendesk or anybody might provide you a chat agent inside of their product, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about automating work. We're talking about building robust enterprise-grade agents that you control. So this visual is kind of a great way to understand that point we make in our best practices. This next visual, I think, is important because right now what you're kind of going through, if you're starting to deploy if you're starting to deploy agents, is that all of your knowledge is kind of scattered in all these different places. As humans, even though we think we're organized, we're not really that organized, right? So your data is, it's some of your data is in SaaS applications, some of your data is in email boxes, some of it's in SharePoint, some of it's in a support desk app, some of it's in legacy PDFs or docx's or God knows where. CSI companies have been around for decades. Sometimes this knowledge is so scattered, nobody knows where it is. And so the idea of becoming AI native, before you start thinking about deploying AI at scale, you have to start to organize your knowledge. And so one of the things that we help you do is to move this knowledge and become more organized and put it into an AI native format. So getting it into basically a vector store, or opening up those data sources to MCP, which allows your AI agents and the platform to connect to these data sources and start to shift away from this kind of ugly distributed sense of chaos and give the AI what it really needs, which is an AI-ready data source. And so ultimately, you're starting to see this shift happen already. Most of the companies that you probably work with have MCP servers that you can tie into, just don't know how to do that yet. And a lot of the documentation that you have needs to be transferred and needs to be converted into vectors. And this is something we help you do with our products. So again, trying to get away from that distributed kind of chaotic view and get your data into a situation where it can be AI native. This is going to help you accelerate. And we're going to showcase some of the I think I just got kicked off here. Sorry about that. Let me get back to the meeting here. My fault. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if they can hear me? Okay. All right, great. All right, so I don't know where I left off, but it looks like we kind of overflowed Google here. So my fault. I think I was talking about the playbook, so I'll just kind of quickly get through that. So just in case I lost you guys, basically just kind of to recap, moving away from tools to agents, realizing your intelligence was the first point we were trying to make. The second point we're trying to make is moving away from vendor dependence, where all your AI is outsourced, and you bring your AI back into your control plane. Of course, this is where raia comes into play. And then the third piece that I wanted to talk about was, all your data being scattered in a variety of sources, and nobody really knows where your source of truth is, and data being trapped in different areas, whether it be SharePoint, so forth, or SaaS products, and trying to convert that into becoming more AI ready, and having that data be converted into vectors so that your AI agents can access it, thus your employees can access it better. And then, of course, looking at MCP connectors to your third-party sources. And then finally, the same logic for employees, where your employees currently are using tools independently, but how do you enable them to start building and deploying agents and actually managing their agentic workforce? And that's where you get real scale. So tools are a great place to start the process of building some of the core components of AI. But ultimately, when you start talking about building out workflows and start talking about agentic AI and autonomous AI, you want to have your team be able to build agents, manage those agents, and scale your productivity. And of course, extend that value out to your customers. And then finally, one of the big components that we have to kind of consider as we move forward is, right now, you probably have a lot of AI happening. In some cases, you might even have shadow AI, which means AI being used by people that you're not even sure, tools that you're not even aware of. And there's obviously a lot of concerns around security and compliance, but more importantly, there's a lot of concerns around cost. And so there's a ton of chatter, a ton of things happening, but no real organization. And of course, as you start to deploy more and more agents, it gets worse and worse and worse. So the idea of a control plane is to start pulling in and having a central place where all that AI traffic can be managed and monitored, so that you can actually see value and tie it to outcomes, right? Again, this is the benefit of going not having a lot of luck today. Sorry, guys. I'm really struggling here. Let me just make sure that I stay online here. Not sure what's kicking me off, but I will continue here. So essentially, what I was kind of displaying there was the idea around centralizing is super important when you talk about AI, and this. So we're going to talk more about the raia approach to this right now. So let me go ahead and share my screen and hopefully not get kicked off again. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the functionality and features that we've deployed out recently that we're excited about. Includes some of the core features that you might have saw in our release notes. And just FYI, those are available on our docs site as well. If you ever want to see what we're working on or what's been recently released, you can view our release notes here. So I'm just going to go through them and to kind of highlight what we've added to the platform and how to use this to benefit your business. Of course, if you're already a raia user, you can these are available for you today. If you're not, you can also sign up for a developer license, which I'll share with you guys at the end of the call or as an email. But if you go to license.raia.run, you can register for a developer license if you don't already have one. So you can start to experiment with this. So the first thing I want to talk about today is the basically the orchestration skill. And so what we've done is we've obviously expanded this capability so that agents can talk to other agents and it makes it easier for you to set up. We've always had this capability, but we've actually advanced it, made it easier for you to kind of configure, if you will, within your own agents. So, and instead of it just being one agent to another agent, you can have a multi-tiered approach to this. So you'll see it under raia, under the orchestrator skill. And what ends up happening is you can pick out your agent that you want it to be the orchestrator. That's the agent that's going to essentially be the primary communicator with a person, whether it be live chat or Copilot or whatever it might be. And then you can add sub-agents underneath that agent. And then the orchestrator can then communicate to those agents as needed for specific information. And so when you set up a sub-agent, you'll notice that you have a sub-agent prompt, which tells the AI when to use this sub-agent. So it will tell the orchestrator, hey, when somebody asks about our customers or asks about this contract or asks about this XYZ, it knows to transfer that or ask that other agent for the answer and bring that answer back to the user. And we also support keywords as well. So if you wanted to just be spawned off a keyword, you could do that as well. And the other thing that we support here as well is that you can have sub-agents, and then you can also have multiple tiers. So for example, if this support agent here, if I wanted to add a sub-agent under them, I could just come in here, add the orchestrator skill, and add a sub-agent under this agent. So let's say I wanted to add my personal agent, and I can give it like kind of a prompt that can be expanded out pretty easily. And then of course, if I want to give it a keyword, like something like my name. And so what you have here is now you have this agent, the support agent has a personal assistant here, but then I can also go back to my orchestrator agent, and you can see how now you have this multiple tiered. So the cool thing about the orchestration is this gives you the ability to kind of leverage many agents that might be trained on very specific categories of knowledge, whether it be products, whether it be a specific use. And then you can start to really kind of create this hive, if you will, of how these agents communicate to each other. And of course, the goal being that as you start to build out your agentic workforce, you can find it makes it easier for whoever's accessing that agent to get access to that information from not just one agent, but from many other agents. So we're pretty excited about this skill. Check it out. It's kind of something that we're going to put a lot more energy into as well on how we expand into that functionality. So going back over the release notes, another thing that we have enhanced out is our MCP components. So as you know, MCP is a way that tools, but also agents and or applications can communicate easier with agentic or AI, using AI to easier to third-party applications. So if you're familiar with APIs, this is kind of the way we used to do it, where you would have an API and you would programmatically access whatever it be, like Salesforce, Zendesk, or whatever application you want to. And obviously with AI, it brought in this kind of language-based interface. So MCP is that layer in between the API and that language, and it makes it easier for the agent to translate what you're asking from the AI to do and put that into an API and get it from that third-party application. So when you go into the MCP skill now, if once you add this the skill, you'll see that there's two forms of MCP. The first one is if you want to MCP into our agent. So for example, let's say you have a tool like Claude or OpenAI, which I do have here open. So like, for example, this is my Claude here. And what I've done is I've actually added my agent to be able to communicate with, and I did that through using MCP. And so what in Claude, it's basically just adding it as a plugin. And so when you actually go in and start a new chat, for example, you can see it as it'll show up as a sorry, let me just reload here. Yeah, you can actually just reference it into the chat, and it will access this our MCP server direct. So if you want to integrate our AI agents into Claude or into ChatGPT, as another example, or into Teams, wherever it might be, connecting to our agents using MCP is a great way to do that. Of course, you can also do it through any other tool that supports connecting via MCP, whether it be your own applications, etc. And let me kind of show you also, yep. So basically, this is our agent responding to the request inside of Claude. The other and to set that up is actually pretty basic. You can do it through a header-based authentication through API, or in most cases, tools you do it through OAuth. And so we provide your registration URL here for you to OAuth into your agent, and that preserves the security elements that you require on the tool side to make sure that that you're connecting, through an authorized source. The other way that you can leverage MCP is our agent connecting to a third-party source. And so let me kind of show you one example of that. So like, for example, if you wanted to connect an agent to Jira, you could set up your, well, they didn't have it set up here, but you basically set up your server. You would, basically say, I'm going to connect this to Jira. You would provide the MCP link to the Jira MCP server, and you would provide the authorization tokens, and then you would be able to connect to that MCP. So I'll show you an example of an MCP that we have internally. Let me just find it here. Not that one. Let me just do this one here. Yep. So in this example, we connected to our CRM system, which we provided essentially the URL to grab the tools, and then once the tools were located, it provided all the different tools that are available to us via the MCP server, and then you authorize what tools you want this MCP server to have access to, and then once you have that going, then of course you can simply just ask the agent to access that tool set, which is pretty straightforward. So if I were to come in here and just basically ask, it will then be able to contact that MCP server, then contact that third-party application. Of course, that third-party application can be anything that you access, but in this case, it's accessing our CRM, and it brought back 3 customers of ours in the solution. All right, so let me go back here. So the next one that and these 2 skills are pretty powerful in context of what we were talking about earlier. Number one, being able to have multiple agents communicating to each other and building out that agentic workforce, and having somebody on your team manage that gives you so much more scale and control of what's going on within your business, versus like a decentralized, distributed deployment of AI. And also, you can manage your capabilities and your tokens much easier as well. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. And then that MCP component is really about, how do I bring my systems into the fold, and how do I have my agents be able to communicate to those systems, so I can power my agents and give them more access to data at my fingertips. And so it's very easy to set up, very easy to put together. And then, of course, these agents can be shared with your team to be leveraged. And again, you can centralize all that control at that point. Let me go back over to the release notes. So we talked about MCP skills, which is pretty cool. Another one that we just launched is our data retention skill. This is very important from a security and sometimes a compliance perspective. So if you're familiar with zero-day retention and the idea of being able to anonymize or delete your data after a certain number of days, You can do that now within raia, and you have full control over it at the agent level. And so all you have to do is essentially add the data retention scale or skill. And what this allows you to do is you can set your retention day period, whether it could be 1 day, it could be 30 days, it could be 90 days, but it allows you to get rid of all the conversations, get rid of all the users' data, and just keep the basic telemetry data, basically the number of tokens and the keys, but everything that is PII and everything that is conversationally has been deleted. This is not something you have to use for every agent you deploy, but there's sometimes you have agents that have sensitive information or have data, or you just want to control the blast radius, or you just don't want to have any information out there looming. This is a great skill to add to your agent. And this is super powerful because a lot of people have agents that they want to keep the conversations because they want to do reinforcement training, or they want to build up that database and they want to have access to it for a period of time. But they also might have separate agents that they don't want to have any residue of any conversation after 30 days or after 1 day. And so the flexibility of being able to do this at the agentic level is very unique to our platform. This is not something that you would find on most platforms. Most platforms are either all in 0-day retention or none. So this gives you the full flexibility of managing that. So let me go back to here. So that was a pretty cool skill. Another skill that we launched is the message quota skill. So basically, the message quota skill allows you to control how many messages can be sent by a specific user or by all your users within an agent. And so when you enable this skill, you can create a daily message limit. Let's say I want to only allow somebody to do 30 messages per day, or you could obviously also enable at a per user level, and you can actually go down to each specific user and provide daily limits. Again, this is a great skill to enable if you want to either restrict how many users or how many messages can be sent by users. Sometimes if you, like, for example, launch an AI agent to a large audience, maybe it's even an anonymous audience like live chat, or maybe it's to a bigger audience, and you don't want to have any sort of potential abuse, like somebody gets in there and cranks through 300 messages. You can set a cap, stopgap for that. Or you just might have an agent that you only want to limit so much usage to, and this enables you to do that. And this complements an already existing setting that we have, which is setting the token limit on an agent. So as you know, we have this usage tab here, and you can set limits on an agent on how many tokens your agent can use. And also on an organizational level, you can minimize or you can maximize how many tokens your organization or specific users can use. So there's really two approaches to managing usage. It's token-based or message-based. Each has its own kind of purpose. Sometimes your token usage is how you want to monitor and manage your costs. So you want to limit that on an agentic level or on a user-based level. But then also from a message limit perspective, sometimes that's a better way to, for example, let's say you had somebody who was sending 1,000 messages, but they weren't burning a lot of tokens. Maybe it was just an SMS or an email back and forth, and it just got caught into a loop or something like that, or things like this. So it allows you to avoid abuse as well as overuse, whether it be authorized or unauthorized. So again, part of this platform is meant to give you full control over these kind of things that we think about and we see happening in the real world that you may not consider when building it on your own. And so just making it really easy at the agent level to customize this. And what's powerful about this, and back to our kind of original point when we were showcasing some of those graphics, was one of our biggest concerns is of managing token use and managing cost. And unless you're centralizing that functionality, it's very hard to do that on the edge without it being kind of an awkward situation where either you're shutting people off on their ability to access AI because they've burned through their tokens, or they're just being burned through but they're not giving you much value. And so when you actually use agents and you have agent doing a specific task and you centralize that intelligence around that agent, and then you expose that agent to hundreds of users, you're actually optimizing your token burn because you're not wasting tokens, you're giving people value, and you're monitoring it in a way that's very healthy. And you don't have to shut it down when one or two users start to kind of abuse it, right? And so this is part of that structure of control are these skills that we just added. All right. Next one is usage limits, which I kind of already showed you, but I'll show you a little bit more on the usage limit side. The part of the usage limits, as I mentioned, is not only here within your agent itself under the usage tab, but you can also go under your settings, under your organization, and you can set your limits as a default for your agents, as well as your user defaults. So if you wanted to do a complete organizational limitation, you could do that, or you could do it on a per agent basis. And also you could do it on a per user basis. So if you actually go into your users, each individual user, you can also set their usage limits. So again, back to what makes a control plane and what gives you full control over your token management is being able to set these things and these criteria. And because there's so many different agents, that there's such a wide variety of agents, right? Like there's some agents that have only a handful of users, and you need to monitor at the user level. So there's some agents that deal with thousands of users, like a live chat support agent, that you just want to monitor maybe at the agentic level, or so again, because you're deploying all these different shapes and sizes of agents, you want to have that flexibility of managing and controlling spend of these different tokens, right? And that way you're always making sure that every token goes to some sort of measurable outcome that has value and that plays into the ROI conversation instead of this kind of uncontrollable spend on the edge, right? All right, so let me go to the next one. The Microsoft Teams Connect is something that we've added. Now, this is something that we've always supported, but it was kind of a nightmare to set up because you had to go in and get IT involved. But we've made it a lot easier now to connect to Teams. And although there is some nuance to this, obviously IT is still involved. Sometimes they have to approve because this is a third party. This is a third party application that you install inside of the Microsoft 365, the Azure cloud. So it still might require a little bit of approval, but if you run into any issues, you can certainly reach out to our support. We can walk you through it. But essentially, the skill, as you can imagine, is you basically connect to your Microsoft 365, and once you go through the authorization process, it connects you to into your Microsoft Teams. And then you can then communicate to the agent as an application inside of Teams. You can include it into different channels, and you can obviously have a direct chat with it as well. We are working with IT and a lot of the different portfolios and different IT teams to make sure that we can make sure that we get make it smoother to get the app authorized. But again, just reach out to us if you hit a brick wall on that, if it's not working. But we're excited about obviously integrating with more and more of these applications. Part of the vision of raia is that raia can live anywhere, right? Your agents that you build can live anywhere. So whether it's in Claude, whether it's in ChatGPT, whether it's in Teams, whether it's in Slack, we want to be able to, whatever agent you're building, we want it to be able to allow you to easily deploy and access it in a multitude of different areas. And that's kind of what's unique about agents, is that they're able to live in your environment in a variety of different places, and they're not siloed to one singular application. And they're not only limited to have access to the knowledge of that one singular application. And so having this agentic layer above and beyond everything that you are looking at for training, but also for inference, for accessibility, is super important to what we're trying to achieve. Another one that we have enhanced, and I'll kind of, the API, we've added some new functionality to the API. I can go over that at the end. This is very technical, so I won't bother. Most of you are probably on the business side of things. Another area where we've enhanced some of our capabilities on the security side is on the geography side. So we've also added ability to limit based on geography selection, restrictions on live chat. So we've continued to add more and more functionality around security when it comes to our live chat component as well. The escalation and notification skills have also had a significant upgrade recently. If you're not familiar with these, essentially this is what is this is primarily the starting point for human in the loop. So when you're setting up an agent, you're able to create an escalation skill, which you can essentially either provide a prompt or keywords. So I'll show you kind of how that works here, to allow for your agent to then escalate a conversation. So what we typically ask for is some sort of prompt, and the escalation skill. We usually ask for some sort of prompt that tells the AI when to escalate, or a keyword. And then once you've kind of filled out your escalation skill here, you also can auto assign it to a team member. You can have it email or send a text message. It also notifies you in our application up here inside of our notifications. So we've really improved the flow of when something is escalated, you automatically can get an alert. And also it changes the mode of that chat within our Copilot. And so this is where human in the loop can be it makes it easy to install, where like based on an escalation, I want to bring a human in the loop to kind of oversee what's going on, and be part of that conversation. And as you know, all of our chat applications, whether it's email, SMS, live chat, voice, they all come and follow these skills. And then of course the ultimate area where you monitor this is within the raia Copilot skill. And so when you see, for example, a chat come through, you have and an escalation skill is then triggered, then you'll see it kind of change the status over here to escalation, and then you'll get the alert, and then you can come in and do human takeover by clicking on this icon here, and that allows you to kind of go into human in the loop, right? So that's a functionality that we've had for quite some time. It was just more of a reminder of how those things tie together. All right. So notification skill works very much like you would imagine. At the end of a conversation, we package up the conversation, and you can notify by email, by text message, or by webhook everything that happened within that message. It's a great way to kind of stay in touch passively with what the AI agent is doing, and that's an easy thing to set up on your side. We've also added some great functionality to the auditor skill. So again, a big component of, and this is another human in the loop element, so it's worth mentioning. And so when we think about the auditor skill, what we're really talking about is the escalation skill is really more about, okay, somebody needs to, we're identifying something where a human needs to get involved. Let's say it's a support issue and somebody's asking for, to talk to a human, for example, then we can easily escalate that. From an auditing perspective, it's much more looking for those outliers that kind of trigger concerns, right? And so when you think about an auditor skill, what we're looking for here is things like PII or potential hacks, or just people who are trying to either abuse or misuse the AI itself. And the auditor skill has the ability to shut down a conversation, whereas an escalation skill can bring a human in the loop, and that human can get engaged, but the AI can also still remain engaged With an auditor, we can actually, stop and avoid any sort of continual abuse, and also can create an alert as well. So it's a different kind of human in the loop, and something that you can track as well. And if you wanted to report it to a security, system or something like that, you can do that as well through webhooks. And you can obviously monitor these alerts right through here. So again, we've enhanced this quite a bit. You can also create your custom audits as well. So if there's something you want to audit for that's not like a normal PII or something like that, you wanted to audit for something specific to that your agent needs to look for, you can certainly set that up here. And so, yeah, so these are the primary updates that I wanted to cover, but I want to kind of go through a few other things as well. Specifically around the skills that we've added, and just to kind of highlight again some of the new ones, but want to make sure that you know that they exist. One is it's been around for a while, is the is the enhanced prompting skill. And so the enhanced prompting skill is something that if you are using our raia Copilot and you want to be able to enable better returns or better results from prompts that are being submitted into your agent by your users, the enhanced prompting can really break out people's prompts and make it more specific and more verbose enough to where it makes the AI work better. It actually also decreases the amount of repeat questions and token burn. And so enhanced prompting is something that's is a great, cool feature that's used more for internal Copilot use cases, like what we do for like the finance team at head office, or some of the M&A stuff that we've done, or some of the internal support stuff where the user is only putting in a handful of words, and we're leveraging the enhanced prompting to expand that prompt out before sending it to the AI to get a better response. And so that's something that I think if you're not playing around with it, you should definitely play around with it. It's a really cool functionality, and it also can help reduce token burn quite a bit on some of your high use agents. Another thing that I wanted to highlight that was something we've added but may not be aware of is inside of Copilot, we've added quite a few features and functionality that allows you to do some really cool stuff. We've expanded how many documents you can upload now to 20 documents. Of course, you can still leverage the vector store for training, but if you're processing documents, on the inference side, we've expanded that so it allows to do more complicated tasks. You can also obviously by give it more functionality, you can create buttons and commands now. And so what this allows you to do is it allows you to give Copilot more functionality. So like a command would be where if you wanted to allow Copilot to send an email to yourself or to somebody, you can use these commands that tie into our skill library. And it basically, these slash commands just gives you more power within the Copilot interface. Other components that we've also added include think here. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the Copilot, but these are really cool. I should definitely check those out. On live chat, very similar advances. We've added quite a bit of new functionality, including, again, buttons that you can trigger based on a variety of different ways. You can trigger buttons based on keywords, based on prompts, and so forth. And that's all done here in the settings that you can set up. And we've also added things like what operational hours, if you want to only allow a live chat during certain hours. You can create forms to collect information pre-chat, which is pretty cool. So that allows you to grab contact information, or even just ask a few questions to give the AI some context. Obviously expanded a lot of our design. You'll notice that we did a full redesign of the product and enhanced and added a lot of really cool new capabilities within our live chat, but also just in our general UI as well. And then you can also incorporate live chat as slider, as a pop-up, as embedded now. So you can really get creative on where these interfaces can live. And as I mentioned earlier, kind of expanding out your security side, including if you wanted to do 2FA through the live chat, we support that as well now. So you can actually have somebody verify their email or verify their phone before entering into a live chat experience. So again, I highly encourage you guys to check out the documentation around a lot of the functionality we've added to these different experiences. All right, so that kind of gets you through the skills that we've added. Pretty excited about the orchestration, pretty excited about the MCP stuff. We're going to be releasing a lot of this. We're going to be building out a lot of these kind of things over the next few weeks as far as enhancing these features and trying to get them to you, giving you some examples and giving you some connectors that you can play around with. On the training side, just a kind of a real quick highlight. We've recently added support for the 5.6 models that just recently came out with OpenAI. So you can start experimenting with that for some of the things that they've made some pretty, like with any new model, there's advancements, but obviously something to play around with if you wanted to experiment with on your side. And then the other thing that I want to kind of talk about too is that we're in the works right now in the development cycle, and hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll be supporting a wider range of models, including open source models, and which we're excited about. And this is another kind of commitment we made by being kind of a vendor independent control plane for CSI companies, and being a platform that allows you to have the flexibility of choosing, as much as you can, and giving that flexibility and being able to easily switch between vendors. We hope to open up that capability pretty soon. We're currently testing it. It's working very, very well. And the goal here, obviously, is that you can still continue to use frontier models, but you can also, if you need to, leverage some of the other models that are out there at a much lower cost, and obviously providing you way more flexibility and also vendor independence. So that should be rocking pretty soon here. So that kind of concludes the release notes part of the call. And so what I want to do now is kind of toggle over a little bit and showcase, and then I'll open up for some questions, and I'll kind of guide through these questions. So if you do have questions, please, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat, and then I'll address them in a second here. But I wanted to quickly toggle over to a product that we launched a few months ago, and some of you are already using, but if you're not, I wanted to make sure that you knew existed. And I'm just going to have to let me log in real quick. The product that we built out and launched recently was a product that we were using internally for quite some time. And we realized that it was something that our customers needed as much as we needed to deploy AI agents. And so we call it raia Command. And the idea behind raia Command is that we saw a challenge with kind of one of the things I showed earlier, which was this idea of how do you kind of take this nightmare of gathering all this data that you have and all this information that you have to bring it into becoming AI native. And so it starts with documents. And so when you have, for example, whether it be code or whether it be Word documents, whatever it might be, you want to basically get them into a central source that you can then translate them into embeddings that you can then upload into the vector store for your agents to use, right? And so we've tried to build a tool that makes it super easy for you to just drag and drop and make that happen. And so it's simple as, it's basically, think of it like Dropbox and as a baseline for your documents. And what it allows you to kind of do is, what it doesn't matter what format your documents are in, you can easily just drag. I'll just drag and drop a few just to kind of demonstrate it. You can take, for example, PDFs or or any other, or docx or whatever it might be. And when you upload it into raia command, it will automatically convert it. It'll put it in your taxonomy. It'll label it. It'll process it. It'll score it for you on the quality of training. And then if you have it set up, it will automatically, upload it to an agent if you've already hooked that up, or you can manually do that as well. So for right now, for example, this one's automatically uploading into one of our agents because I've already kind of configured it to automatically upload into into the raia CX platform. Of course, you can also just upload it and look at the document, how it's converted. So a great example is, it brings out your summary, it creates your labeling, it converts it into Markdown, which is what the AI is wanting to see. And then that Markdown is then chunked up, created embeddings, and put it into a vector store. And so I think I showed you this, this kind of graphic that we use to kind of demonstrate that, which is, kind of converting your knowledge, right? So basically taking all this information, all these documents, all these different systems that you have to connect, and essentially what command does is it operates as a way for you to convert all that into a vector store and or allows you to connect through the MCPs, right? And so from a connection perspective, what we've done with command is we have oneconnectors. And so this is where you can connect to your different systems, and you can start to, once you've added your connection, you can start to bring in data from those different third-party sources, and you can draw that into your training, or you could also use it from an MCP perspective. So let me kind of show you example of, so like, for example, if you were to connect your Jira, once you've added your connection and you've created it, through kind of just adding your keys and your tokens, then you can set up your systems to bring all that information in into your sources. And so once it syncs up, and you can obviously set this to sync on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, what ends up happening is it goes into your projects so that you can actually see the data itself imported in, and then converted into Markdown, and then converted and made available into your agent, as an example. So let me show you kind of another one here. So like this is, for example, team support, where we're bringing in tickets from team support and or knowledge base articles, right? And then you're able to then, once all that information kind of sinks in, you're able to then go in and use that data to train your agents. And by creating this connection and connectivity, again, just centralizes all your intelligence, makes it easy for you to get it over to your agents, and from whatever source it might be. And connecting your agents to command is really easy. You just connect it to the API keys, and then once you've connected your agents, it's super easy to then push anything that you want to, either manually or automated, right into your agent. So if I wanted to push my training directly to my AI agent, I just pick off what agent I want to send it to, and it automatically does all the embeddings and all the knowledge graph. It does all the hard work for you. So it's really meant to be something that makes it very simple to control all of your intelligence and get it into your agents. We also, part of command is we provide pretty robust reporting. So whether it be at the organization level or whether it be at the agentic level, you can monitor all the activity of your agent, whether it be usage, whether it be number of users, token usage, things like that. This is very important because obviously we want to kind of maintain and keep an eye on all the agents in one singular place. Again, giving you that command and control. All right, so I think I've given like an overview of what's new over the last, I would say 30, 60 days. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to toggle over and start kind of addressing some questions. And I do apologize. I think we had a couple of disconnects. I'm not sure if how much we missed or how much you didn't miss, but I guess we got overloaded on Google Meet, and so it crashed a couple times. But yeah, so let me go ahead and start answering questions. If you have a question, just click on the chat button down there and just post it there, and I'll go ahead and start addressing them. All right. The first question is, what does human-in-the-loop escalation look like for end user? Is it just a chat interface or like a dashboard? Does it have built-in actions like approve, reject, send back with comments, etc.? So it's a great question. So human-in-the-loop has obviously a lot of shapes and sizes of how you can deploy it. At a baseline within our product with our specific Copilot product and live chat, as an example, and it doesn't have to be live chat, it can be email or it can be SMS, but essentially when something comes through the support channel, then what you can expect is that, and it gets escalated, or if somebody comes in and you want to go human in the loop, the experience kind of looks something like this. So I'll go ahead and just show you like a live example just from our website, just so you can get the full picture. So let's just assume that somebody is coming, onto like our website, and this is obviously our live chat experience here, and so this is going to be, basically a sales, maybe potentially support, but most likely a sales feedback loop here. So what's happening here, whether this was email, SMS, it's all the same, right? We're going to get this message is going to show up inside of our tool here. So this is going to occur in our sales agent here. So now I'm the internal agent on my side, and I'm viewing this conversation from internally. So you can see that it's the same conversation, right? That's occurring on the live chat right now. And if I wanted to, now if this got escalated, or if it got, or even if the human saw that they wanted to step in, essentially typically when it's escalated, it would show up over here under the escalated tab like this. And I would come in and you would see something like this has been escalated, and I would come in as human in the loop. But I'm going to go ahead and just force escalation on this one for the demo's sake. And I'm just going to toggle in and go human in the loop manually. And so then I could come in and start to chat. Now it's obviously human to human, right? I've taken the AI out of it, and obviously it starts to appear on the live chat experience seamlessly from a human in the loop. So that would be like what I would call the baseline human in the loop, where there's not a it's a very much a fluid like a support situation or sales situation, as an example. As far as like if you're going to have yes no type of inflections, like if you're going to insert kind of what I would call preset answers, you would configure that as buttons within your agent. So these are areas where you can start to incorporate the button functionality. If you wanted to say, for example, if there's approval required and you just wanted to say, do you approve, yes, no, then, or you could just type it obviously as well. Then those kind of interactions come into play. One of the things that we try to do also with escalation skill is you can invoke a webhook. And by invoking a webhook on an escalation skill, that opens up your world to many other possibilities. That could include something like sending a message to Teams or to somebody, anywhere, or to a third-party application that might, or maybe to another API call that might check something to look for an answer, then come back and authorize a next step. So when I think of human in the loop, it could also be other things in the loop that require feedback or authorization. Most of that has to be kind of created in your workflow, but a lot of it can be the baseline can be easily implemented just through kind of the conversational human in the loop that I just demonstrated. One of the things that we're starting to investigate and learn more about is when somebody who is not on the chat experience, right, but needs to approve something. Maybe they receive an email, and that email then submits a approve or don't approve or yes or no, and then that workflow goes back to the conversation. You can do all that programmatically using a workflow engine with our product, but we are trying to think of ways that we can simplify that. Currently, very easy to do in our native interface. So great question. Let me kind of toggle back over to the chats. The next one is, how can we ensure our BU is using raia to its full capabilities? Do we have a top-down approach? Yeah, so my guess is that I don't know of many BUs that we work with that are completely are using raia to its full capability, to be honest. I mean, a lot of these capabilities obviously are very new, right? I mean, a lot of the functionality that we've built over the last 6 months in conjunction with a lot of the BUs we work with are new to to even users that have been with us for years. So I think at a baseline, this is one of the reasons I'm doing this, is to kind of showcase and try to show a lot of the capability. One of the things I highly encourage anybody who isn't familiar with is we just relaunched our docs website that has a pretty substantial improvement on training. Specifically, we divided it into different roles. This is something that we've learned over the last year, is that there's really 4 different people that are involved in deploying AI agents. There's the functional expert, the technical agent builder, the person who kind of is more technical than everybody else, the agent user, the power user that's there to really do the testing, and then the integration specialist, right? The person who understands how to integrate with their current systems and do the security DevOps kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's functional expert driven. And so, when we're deploying agents, whether it's support, sales, operational, legal, M&A, typically we start with one single agent, and that's the scope of work that they're kind of limited to. But now, with all this new functionality and making it so easy to build agents, we're trying to push, obviously, all the BUs to start deploy more and more agents as they feel necessary. And so we provide this training for these different user roles, because sometimes the functional expert may not know how to do integrations or how to do API or MCP setup, but they can certainly find somebody on their team or work with us on that. The other thing that we've obviously enhanced, and we've done I think a better job with this new version of documentation, is we've really broken out the skills, and we kind of guide you through how to use each one of the skills in depth. And we've also created quite a bit of video tutorial as well that you can leverage in our product training. And so we have rebooted that as well. And for the developers, we've expanded our developer hub, which we've created a lot of different cool things that you can access. One of the coolest things that I think recently launched as well, which I think is I guess currently in beta, but works great. I've been using it quite a bit. Is we launched a Chrome extension, so now you can actually load you can load an extension into your browser, and you can access your agents right in your browser at any point in time. So you don't have to worry about having to go back or log in or forget about being able to access an agent through our Copilot or through Teams or through Claude. You can actually have it in your browser at all times. And you can actually authorize it to see what's on the page you're on as well. So there's a lot of really cool things I highly suggest you check out. Here's the browser extension here that you can set up. It's real easy to kind of install. You can just go to the Chrome extension setup, and goes right into your browser here. I don't know if you guys can see it because it's like in my browser, but you might be able to see the give me a second here. Yeah. So you might be able to. So, and then all you have to do, again, you can't see it, but I'm going to go ahead and set it up. But all you have to do is add an agent to it. So I'm just going to add, for example, go into your agent, and you grab your live chat ID, which allows you to then, as long as your agent is public, allows it to, you to add it to your Chrome extension, and then you can load it up. Let me just now I can show you. Yeah, and then it makes it really easy to then just anytime you need to access your Chrome, your agent, so like I'm on a website here, right, and it could be any website, doesn't matter, you can browsing, but it makes it easy for me to just access my agent right in my browser, right? And you can add multiple agents. You can have it load up as an icon on your site. You can see here, right here, Ask Raia, and you can access it there, or you can just have it in your header here. So again, what's cool about this is that you can load up all your different agents that you want to be able to access through here, and easily ask it questions, about your whatever that agent does, right? If it's a support agent, or if it's connected to your CRM, if it's your sales, it doesn't really matter, right? Whatever your personal agent, and if you tie it all together, the idea is that, again, the point is raia can live anywhere, right? Your agent you're building, or a multitude of agents that you're building, can live anywhere. It can live in my browser. It can live in my Teams. It can live in my, on my text message. You can text your agent, obviously. You can email your agent. And of course, you can have it live right here, and make it super easy to access right directly in your browser. So that's like a really cool example of some of the stuff that we try to continue to expand for you guys to be able to do more of. And of course, we have a pretty robust API, so it's real easy to also expand it on your own. But if you haven't done so already, you can certainly sign up to get notifications. If you're already a user, I try to keep you guys up to speed on it, as far as getting access to the latest and greatest. But we'll do these calls quite often to highlight our releases and new products and new features. But if you haven't gone through the training, or haven't expanded on and looked at all the different products and what's possible, again, all these products are available to you at no additional cost, right? Like, so if you're on the raia platform and you're a subscriber, all you need is your license key. Everything we build is included in our package. We don't charge for seats. We don't charge for applications we build. We don't charge for agents, how many agents you build. So again, this is very, it's a very pro, we want you to expand. We want you to build. It's just like anything else, just usage based. But even within the usage, we're trying to save you some money on maximizing your tokens as well. Which brings me to another point that I'd like to make. When we another cool feature that you wouldn't see in the necessarily in the UI, but we just released, is prompt caching as part of our and prompt and input token optimization are two things that we just released inside of CX. And what this does is it actually consolidates and gets rid of a lot of useless words that are sometimes part of input prompts, as well as we cache certain prompts and don't have to resend it to the models. So this prompt caching and these ability to kind of reduce and compress your inputs using raia has shown significant decrease in tokens that you have to pay for. So in some cases, like for example, one of our most used agents, it reduced token usage down by 40%. And when we launched it last month, so very powerful stuff you get out of the box, which I always try to talk about, but I sometimes forget how important that is, how powerful that is to be able to manage as you scale these agents moving forward. All right, let me go back over to the chat and see what the next one is. So yeah, how do you get more? How do you get better? And how do you use our platform more? Just get everybody on there. It doesn't cost. Get everybody on your team signed up, building stuff, experimenting with stuff, and then hopefully the good stuff rises to the top. And more people. It's a very easy platform to use. You don't have to be technical. And I think if you can formulate this team, or at least have identified this team within your organization, or even within your BU or in your portfolio, these 4 people here, that is definitely probably the most important part, right? Get the functional users, get the technical, the DevOps person, and they can help you accelerate the deployment of agents much faster. Okay. Can MCP connector support local MCP servers, not externally available? I'm guessing not. We are using local MCP servers with Claude Cowork. I think you could support certain things. I think if you experiment with, and I could be wrong here, but I think if you experiment with was it? I think is it CrowdStrike, or there's definitely places where you can create with like CloudStrike and other tools where you can point to a local service and expose it with a unique public URL. A lot of people do that when they're doing, for example, when they're deploying when you do browser takeover, as an example. And so I think there's definitely probably a way to do that. I have to dig into exactly what you guys are doing, but my guess is that you could probably create like a URL on one of these services that are out there and point it to your local desktop and maybe expose it that way. But again, I don't know until I get into the details of it. It's a relatively technical thing. Another question is it possible to connect MCP server, which is deployed on a private network behind a VPN? My guess is that there probably is. Again, slightly technical, requires a little bit more information. I think you would have to, again, go through some sort of controller interface to allow for that. But it may not be. If your security, if there's a reason behind that it's behind a VPN, there might be some sort of like middle. There might have to be something deployed in the middle there that allows and authorizes that authentication. So these are 2 great questions, but I'll have to dig into it more. Can you connect to on-premise databases? Again, it does depend if they are accessible, right, from the World Wide Web. So you have to have some sort of connectivity into those on-prem databases. I assume that they might have accessibility, or that you can deploy some sort of form of access. Maybe not because of compliance or security. This is one of the challenges we have, right, at CSI, is a lot of our deployments are on premise, and it's too expensive to put a model on premise, right? To buy a server that runs models is a couple $100,000. So nobody has that kind of money to throw around when you're talking about locally deployed models. So you're trying to bring the power of AI to an on-prem service. You're going to have to find some sort of middleware or some sort of way to connect those two worlds. But it's definitely something that we're digging into deeper and playing around with more, because a lot of our customers are looking to deploy AI inside of their customers' ecosystem or inside of these on-prem deployments. But it's definitely a challenge that requires some deep thinking on how you do it at scale and allow for you to expose some of these valuable assets. But my gut tells me that there's a reason why these things might be locked down, and it might be more of a business challenge, less of a technology challenge. I mean, anything can be exposed in a secure manner to the web. Obviously, these systems are exposing themselves somehow, probably to the web at some level. But whether that's being, whether we can do it or find an authorized way to do it is really kind of a case by case, I think. Here's another one: is how can we automate the agents? I can't see a workflow option. Isn't there another feature or term that you use for automation instead? Yeah. So essentially, when we talk about automation or building out like autonomous workflow, one of the things that we do within raia is we have a couple of skills that make it possible for you to use workflow engines. So we don't build a workflow engine. It's something that we a long time ago decided that we didn't want to get into the business of owning the workflows, that we wanted to leverage open source. So all the workflows that we build for clients and also that we recommend, we do on a workflow engine called N8N. And it's open source. It's also something that you could use on the cloud, and you can also use on-prem, and you can use and install locally. And we love it because it's open source, and we also love it because it's very powerful. It's kind of like if you use Zapier or Make or any of these other workflow engines, this one is very much more AI and agentic. And we actually have a node inside of the product, so we've integrated with it. But the function, the areas that you want to focus on when it comes to workflow is going to be the function skill, where you can set up functions that can connect to webhooks, which basically every time you hear the word webhook within, like in this session, typically what we do is we connect to a webhook inside of N8N workflow, right? Just like you would connect to a webhook inside of Zapier or any other kind of workflow engine. And the other thing we love about separation of workflow from raia is that you can have complete ownership and of your workflow engine. You can decide which one you want to use, and you can connect, and we can connect to it no problem through our webhook skill, which is down here. As you can add webhooks that can connect to any sort of workflow engine, or you can also connect it through our function skill, where you can call webhooks while chatting with an AI agent. So that's kind of how the automation would work. Is, let's say you wanted to set up an autonomous workflow where it's triggered by a time or triggered by some other element that's not a human, and then you would call our agents throughout that workflow through our API to do certain actions and then have some sort of outcome. So when we deploy a relatively sophisticated agent, it includes one or more agents that are configured and trained using command as the primary input mechanism to get documents and connect to third-party sources to train that agent. And then we use N8N as a workflow engine to do any sort of autonomous workflow. Now, I do believe AI agents are getting better and better and smarter, where they can start to think and build their own workflow. It's less deterministic than an N8N, where you can build the workflow and it'll work the same every time. But as you know, these agents are starting to deploy much more sophisticated capabilities, and where they can do certain workflows just natively working with the model using sub-agents. And so this is something that we've also started to experiment with. It's not as deterministic as like an N8N workflow that you can kind of just basically build out, just like you would build out kind of like a flow chart. But certainly, I think depending on the use case, I could see how agents will start to be able to build and generate their own workflow logic dynamically. This is a new feature that even OpenAI has recently released that we're now working with them and looking at and seeing how we can integrate it. And also, this is something that you're probably familiar with inside of Claude. If you're using Claude, some of the skills, generating code that drives workflows is another area. Again, our opinion is that the workflow engine should be something that is probably something that you own and maintain control over. It also allows for you to have a much more secure environment because typically in those workflow engines, you're connecting to your different data sources as well and doing more functional inputs and outputs. So you want to make sure that you're in a, you have much more control over that. And also it just allows you to have flexibility on what workflow engine to choose. But yes, you would imagine and oh, by the way, when you buy raia, you actually get you get access to our locally hosted N8N. So even though we don't, we're not the creators of N8N, it does come included in your licensing agreement, and we host it on our cloud, under our secure environment. But you can always switch it and host it on your cloud as well. So this is back to that idea of ownership. And even though raia is owned by CSI, thus owned by everybody on this call, tangentially, right? So we have control over what the future of raia and how it operates. Each BU is responsible for, always taking care of the core elements, right? Your training, your workflow, and your instructions and your core data. All that it should be maintained and your complete control at all times. And that's something that we also, kind of engineer toward and give you that flexibility. So great question on that one. Here's a question. You showed a lot of connectors, but then you said that they sync to MD files. I understand that for training data, but can agents directly read and operate on these endpoints in real time as part of a workflow automation? Yes, of course, that's the MCP skill. So raia Connect is really more about, raia Command is certainly about, let me go kind of toggle over. What I kind of showed earlier is the connectors of pulling data, like the question meant. So I'm pulling data right now and pushing it into training, but you can also access via MCP as well. So you could either connect via MCP to these, through command, or if the party already has an MCP server that you can connect to, you can just do it directly, from our MCP skill. So sometimes you can do it right here, right? So sometimes what's interesting about MCP is that sometimes providers like SaaS companies have an MCP that they provide out of the box, but it's very limited, or it's it just doesn't work the way you want it to work. And the irony is you can actually build your own MCP server, even though it's for a third-party application, on top of their API. And sometimes we do that. And when we do that to provide more robust functionality, you'll see that that's available in command. But if you wanted to use an MCP server that was supplied by another vendor or one that you built by yourself, you could use connect it this way. So yeah, just like I said in the beginning, like MCP is kind of both ways a little bit, right? You can connect to our agents using MCP, and our agents can connect to third-party resources using MCP. And then command for some of the bulk operations, which is basically like pulling down all of your knowledge base articles so that it can go into a vector store so the AI can be trained on your data. That's done through command, not done through MCP. That's just done just through an API connector, a pipeline that we've created. So, but this is very important these are great questions because they highlight the nuance and to some degree the complexity of what you're dealing with in this ecosystem. It can be very confusing if you don't really have a very firm idea on what the best practice is on how you connect to these things. So the question you have to ask yourself is, I've got an agent and I'm going to connect it to this third-party software like Jira, and I want it to create a ticket. Okay, well, that sounds like an MCP, and that sounds like you're going to be doing it during a live chat or during some sort of communication or during a workflow. And so you're going to want to connect to the MCP server on Jira, and you want to train that agent to be able to intake that ticket and be able to process it and be able to push it and format it and push it into Jira in the format you want. And that is where you train the agent to do, right? Versus something like, hey, I want to create a support agent that's trained on all my Confluence articles. Well, that's no longer an MCP necessarily. That might just be us grabbing all of your articles within Confluence, pulling it through command, converting it into Markdown, and uploading it to the vector store. And now your agent has the ability to call the vector store for that information, and maybe has an MCP connector into Jira. So when it actually creates that Jira ticket, it leverages the Confluence training to be able to build out a better Jira ticket that it posts. So there's the nuance and the difference between inference and training. And yeah, great question. Here's a question. What's the updated documentation URL? Yeah, so it's docs.raiaai.com, but you can also, if you just go to our website, which is always a great place to start, you can always ask our agent, right? It would behoove us not to mention that we have AI everywhere, but you can also go right to if you want to access kind of our documentation, you can just click on developers and go to full documentation or API, or you can go to docs.raiaai.com direct, but it's all linked. It should be linked, through, all of our sites, and so forth. But I'll go ahead and put it in the chat window, just to have it. And also, I'm going to put in the chat window license.raia.run. If you do not have a developer license, it looks like somebody already did. Elliot, thanks. You please go register. You are limited on number of tokens, obviously, but obviously we, if you find use and you start to see some value out of it, it's an easy thing to upgrade to our token package. All right, next question. Does your agentic AI platform have proven experience supporting an end-to-end software delivery lifecycle from customer issue reporting through root cause analysis, development, testing, deployment, and customer resolution? That's a great question. I would say that we probably don't have the full end-to-end software delivery lifecycle. We use it in that manner quite often. So, for example, we have agents that are trained on our code and our DevOps and are synced up with our Jira and our GitHub. But we haven't necessarily seen any BU go to that degree. Again, what's interesting about the AI DLC side of things is that although we do typically have some involvement in helping some of our customers either train an agent on their code or train an agent on their processes or their documentation around their code, either for support or for debugging or whatever it might be. They're still using other tools like, Claude Code, for example, to do their primary development. And they might have a DLC process set up already inside of like automated through GitHub or something like that, through CI/CD or whatever they have set up. And so this is an area where I don't know how much agents, at least in the way that we've deployed agents, I don't know what role exactly they play yet in that world. I can tell you where our agents have had impact, and it may not necessarily be in the launch cycle, although I'm not saying it can't be done that way. I just know that there's other options that might be better off, better suited for what you're trying to do, that are more baked into your development tools, right? Because we're not really a development tool, right? We're like building out these functional AI agents. But where there's areas where there's been quite a bit of use of AI agents, and raia has been like training the agents on your code bases so that it can build out and debug and help you identify areas where there's flaws in the product based on support tickets that might be coming in. Definitely writing Jira tickets or analyzing Jira tickets or analyzing support tickets is areas where agents can do a really good job, because you can train so much more inside of a vector store, and because you can have a more holistic view of your product with an agent than you can with an IDE sometimes, because these development tools, they ingest the code, but only segments of code, right? Because they're limited by the context window, and they may not have the full picture, especially if you're doing like a modernization. They might not have access to your legacy code or your legacy database, data dictionary, or your schemas, or your training documents, or your Confluence, or your Jira. So there's complexity in there that when we look at AI DLC, I think it's a healthy mixture between choosing the right tools and the right programs, but also having agents to support you. The cool thing is our agents support, you could take any one of our agents and connect to it through MCP inside of your IDE as well. So, if you're using like VS Code, for example, you can connect to our agent and have it available to you if you need to like ask it a question specifically about a piece of code that may that may go beyond what the native LLM does, and the native code base has access to. We've also started to see an increase of people using agents for the development of their harness and the MD files within Claude Code. This is something that is stressed quite a bit by Claude, is like make sure that you have better spec documents. And I think one of the challenges people have with writing spec documents is that if they're writing it purely off a development spec, off of just a generic LLM, or maybe they uploaded a couple documents into their LLM and they're starting to write it kind of stream of conscious off of the Claude or whatever it might be, it lacks the depth of the entirety of the product, and it lacks the depth of context. And so by having an agent that's trained up on your entire base of code or entire documentation set, and is a much better starting place. We found that to be a great experience. So there's a lot of areas where agents and tools work very well together. But I would say that I haven't seen, at least with a raia only deployment where we've done full development lifecycle. I would love to see it if you've developed it, because I've seen a few people that have done pieces of the delivery lifecycle, but I have not seen it, in its glory form as of yet. And I know it's something that I know a lot of BUs have been playing around with it. I know when we go to these AI DLC hackathons across the country, this is something that they talk about. But I honestly, I haven't personally seen it yet done from end to end. Great question. Here's another question. Love the new updates. If we are using functions currently for agents talking to each other, should we drop these functions now and use new orchestrator? I definitely would encourage you to check out how orchestrator works and play around with it. Functions work just as well. I mean, essentially that's what orchestrator is. It's just it's a friendly way of setting up functions. And we've put some other components in there, some safeguards. We didn't want to have the ability to have an agent talking to an agent over and over and over, kind of get into an infinite loop, things like that we protect from. But for the most part, when you think of all these skills, I mean, all they're just functions, right, that we've created, that we've wrapped with a nice UI to allow you to make it easier for you to manage and set up. So I would definitely experiment, and you might find that functions give you a little bit more granular control and allow you to do things a little bit differently. And the orchestrator is just too generic for you, or it might be fine. It might work out really, really well. I think when you think about the function skill, that really gives you a raw capability of invoking functions within the AI. It gives you that capability of executing at a very programmatical way, if you will, versus some of the more generic skills. But my guess is that it probably works very similar. So definitely I would experiment with it before I switch over. But at the end of the day, the orchestration skill is just an easier way to deploy the functions, right? Here's another great question. Is there a built-in provision that would prevent agents from hallucinations? That's a great question. I mean, it's a hard question to answer because there's not just one thing that causes hallucinations. It's a multitude of things. And so I can go through a handful of them. The first one, which is the most important one, and this is the biggest difference between what you can experience using a tool versus an agent that has access to a memory, right? It has access to a vector store, is with a tool, you essentially are limited to the context window. Okay, and so a context window gives you so many characters that you can pump in there, and then at some point when it fills up, the AI has to get rid of stuff. And for the most part, it's a little bit of a black box, but everything that I've read, the approach that these AI companies take on the tool side is they start killing the middle, and so they have a primacy and recency. They tend to keep whatever was said first and whatever was said most recent as kind of the most important part of your context window, and then they start to summarize and compress the middle. And the challenge you have here is that when you start to have drift and you start to lose key components of context, especially if that context window has multiple conversations. So one of the challenges that we have as humans when we're using AI is we typically get lazy and we just use the same thread for many different things. So I might start a thread about a spaghetti recipe, and then I might ask it to help me write JavaScript. And so if you can imagine, the AI is probably a little bit confused, right, on what exactly my goal is. So first and foremost, thread management is a key component of reducing drift and hallucination, which you can do on your own. The second thing is having a larger memory bank and having a vector store. And this is what you get with agents that you don't get with with the tools. Now, tools are obviously, these models, they expand their context windows, right? Some of these models have massive context windows, but you're also balancing that with cost. So you might be filling up this context window, and it's a lose-lose. If it's too small of a context window, they start truncating, and thus causes hallucination and causes bad answers. And then you have to refresh and start over again. If it's too big of a context window, then it fills up with a lot more garbage, and again creates more drift. So it's not a solution that's solvable in the context window, in my opinion. You need a vector store, because what a vector store does is it speaks the language, the same language that the LLM speaks. You're basically, when you pass a prompt, it converts it into a vector, and then that goes into the vector store and finds the nearest neighbor that matches what you're looking for. And then it combines that, and then it passes to your large language model, and then it completes your context window. So the vector store is like it's like a cleaner, it's like a filter, but it also allows you to, you could put tens of thousands of documents in there. So it has a massive amount of storage, but it also gives you very dense, very clean results. And so the biggest way to avoid, obviously, is to leverage agentic AI and leverage some of the more advanced enterprise tools when it comes to vector stores and so forth. Another thing that causes these hallucinations, obviously, is the training itself. Sometimes when the prompt that you use, the system prompt that you're giving the AI itself, and also the training that you're giving the AI on how it operates, if that stuff isn't done well, it can cause confusion, or can cause circular references, or some layer of potential causation for hallucination as well. And it might be perceived as hallucination, but it's just bad prompting. Again, when you think about when you're talking to an AI tool or agent, it's two things. It's a massive amount of text, right? This context window, which includes things like your prompt, your conversation, the last 5 things or last 50 things you said to it, its training, its system prompt, all the function calls, all these things that we talk about are all packed into this one massive text document that then has to be sent over to this large language model for it to make sense of. And so the way that taxonomy of that context window, and the training, and how it's formatted, and how it's preserved, is extraordinarily important. And that's what you get when you look at from an agentic perspective, and you get that on a consistent basis, versus like if you give everybody the same tool and you give everybody the same basic, instructions, everybody's going to build it differently. Everybody's going to have various degrees of it working or it not working, or it having high hallucination or no hallucination. And this is the challenge when you live on the edge with AI, is that you get a high variety of variance of results. But the models have gotten better at using chain of thought prompting, by breaking your prompt up into pieces and answering each piece individually. They've gotten much better at avoiding hallucination. Back, a year ago, before they started doing chain of thought, it was a lot more prevalent, but I haven't seen it really as prevalent, if you're using more advanced prompting techniques, which most of the frontier models do. So another thing you could obviously do is instruct the AI, or have another AI checking your AI, which is something you can do within an agentic form, versus you really can't necessarily do that with a tool, except for you unless you're just going to sit there and reprompt it over and over and over and correct it, right? So we don't see hallucination as often as a big problem anymore with agentic rollouts that we do. The biggest challenge that we have when we deploy agents for BUs is, number one, curating and collecting the best possible data to train the AI on. And that's why we launched Command, to make it easy to do that. But it's still a challenge from a business perspective to find good documentation around your business. Sometimes it's just not written down. Sometimes it's in the minds of our people. So getting that information into and being AI native is like a bigger challenge than fighting off hallucination. The other cool thing about when you have a vector store naturally is, once you tell the AI agent that the vector store holds the golden key as far as the best knowledge and that knowledge is now the lens that the AI uses when working with the large language model, you get such a better fine-tuned answer because the LLM has this capacity to go left and right very far if it doesn't have a lot of data to bridge a context of what it's trying to achieve. And when you go to that vector store, you're adding such a dense amount of information onto your prompt to isolate what you're looking for. The LLM performs at such a higher grade of quality. They always, the better the prompt, the better result. And again, the better prompt is not just what you're typing; it's what's being built along the way, all the way down in the RAG, right, in the call that the AI is making. Okay, great question. Another question, another Nicola question. This is gonna be a hard one. I can already tell. Will your platform support hosting customer fine-tuned open weight models or only the original base models? If hosting fine-tuned models, if not supported, can your platform connect to orchestrate externally deployed fine-tuned models? This is another challenging architecture question. My gut says, are we willing to support this 100%? If this is something that a CSI company needs to build and support customers, that's why we exist, right? We want to build things that work for our customers, of course, which you are one of. And so whether we can support it today, is a question of what the architecture looks like, right? So obviously we can connect, technically we can do anything, right? We can connect to anything technology-wise as long as it's capable of doing so. But how do we configure this? How do we set it up to where all parties are happy, it's secure, it's compliant, and so forth? As far as like, if somebody's hosting a model, whether it be on a third-party host or whether they have their own on-prem model, as long as that model's exposed through some sort of hook, I would assume there would be some sort of, whether we build the MCP or whether we build the API connector or a layer, or whether there's one that exists. As long as we can connect to it, I don't see a problem. I mean, this is what we do, right? We connect to third-party databases all the time, right? So I look at models as just another database that we can connect to and include in the system. And whether that's an additional skill, whether that's something that we add to our model library, is to be determined. But this is something that I think we should just definitely talk in more detail about setup, and we can start work and we can scope out and work toward building it out, right? Like that's the game plan here, right? When I think of raia, I think of it's everybody's platform, and we all can contribute. We have a lot of CSI companies that actually have access to the code base and can contribute just like an open source product. It's not open source to the world, but it certainly is in spirit to CSI. So if we are open door policy as far as how transparent we are and what we're doing and what we're trying to build for CSI companies and what we would work together on. So if there's something very specific that needs deeper level of integration, we are more than happy to collaborate on anything. I just want to make sure that was clear. How is raia command storage billed? Is there a price per gigabyte or is it in the package? So basically raia command is, you'll see under command your reporting here. So you'll see right when you log in kind of your token, actually not here in your dashboard here, probably. Yeah, so we do monitor training tokens. So training tokens are actually a lot cheaper. So they count, they're part of your package, but we use very lightweight models. So you're getting like a 0.1 of a token. So it's very minimal. So it's barely anything on comparative to like inference tokens or the tokens that are being used for like reasoning. But yeah, we just monitor the tokens. That's all. There's no other costs that are related. It's part of the package. We're just trying to essentially, if you are processing a lot of documents, that'll show up in your token usage. The storage side of things are not something that's really worth even talking about. It's such a small amount of storage. Until one day somebody uploads 50 terabytes or something, we don't have to worry about that, I don't think. Again, the goal here being that we want you to have the accessibility of getting as much information to your agents as possible so that you have more agents doing work and doing complex work. And training your agents is part of that, and getting your documentation in there. On average, most of the CSIBUs we work with, hundreds of them, they might have, 30, 40, 50 gigabytes, right, of data at the end of the day. Is probably on average what they end up getting to. So it's a significant amount of data, but it's important to get that stuff into BNA already. Right. Another great question. Would you recommend using one shared vector store for all agents or separate vector stores per domain with agents deployed against the respective stores? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each approach? The good news is that you can choose either one with raia. So within raia, by default, we launch. We have many options. By default, every time you launch an agent, each agent comes with its own vector store. So you go under train and then you go under advanced settings. You'll see that every agent has its own vector store. So typically we would say that if you're using an agent and you're training it on a specific data set and for a specific function, I would usually I would just tend to leave that, allow only one agent to access that one vector store just as a default, because that way okay, this agent has access to this data. Now, let's say I wanted to allow multiple agents to access the same vector store. We do allow for you to create, to take this, I could take this vector store ID, for example, and if I went to a different agent, I could go to a different agent, for example, and I could put this ID into this agent, and it would then now access that other vector store. So you can have many agents accessing the same vector store if you want to. Again, I think it's a use case thing. Maybe you have a really solid vector store, like maybe it's like a general knowledge coding vector store, and you want to build a family of agents that that do different things inside of a development lifecycle, but you're basically feeding off the same training database. Then I would say that, yeah, that makes sense, because that way you can only that way you have to worry about just one vector store and updating it, and then all 5 or 6 or 7 of these agents are constantly accessing this one vector store. That makes life easier for you instead of having to upload the same thing to 7 vector stores. So in that scenario, if you have agents that are sharing the same core data, absolutely. You can always also use our retrieval skill, where under skills you have our custom retrievals, external retriever skill here, which you can also add another vector if you had like a Pinecone vector store as well. If you wanted to use a third-party vector store like that, we support that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the short answer to your question is, I could see use cases for both. I could see people needing to maximize. If you want to have one vector store that was just trained on a large volume of data, that you wanted to have different functional agents accessing that's how I would set it up. And then you can always switch it. That's the cool thing about it. If you wake up one day and you say, no, I'm going to separate it now, you could take that agent off that vector store, give it back its own vector store, and move forward. The other cool thing about command, as a side note, is if you have everything in command that you're training your agent on, it's easy to deploy also that documentation, that training information. It's easy to deploy that to multiple agents as well. So we do make it easy to deploy training, even if you have to deploy the same training to multiple agents. But it's a great question, and good news is that you have the flexibility of doing either one. Just to kind of comment on that less about vector store, but more about how to separate agents. When you build an agent, one of the things that you always kind of have to consider is that these agents should be somewhat task oriented and should be kind of they should have their identity and their goal in mind, right? They should have a very distinct input of what to expect, of what they're going to get as an input, and a very distinct output and outcome, what they're doing, right? So you don't want to make an agent that is trained to do too much, because it can get confused or it may not give you the outcome you need. And instead of for example, instead of building one agent that does your support, your tier 1 support triage, your Jira ticket creation for your support, and your internal note taking for your support ticket. Instead of having one agent do all three of those things, you might ultimately want to have 3 agents that have very clear system instructions on what they do, have different outputs that you can control, the formatting, and and might have different functions and different integrations, right? It also allows you to have a lot more separation of from a security and compliance perspective, right? If you have an agent that is front facing and is live chat, for example, on your website, you might have that agent do all of your communication to the public audience, but then webhook the result of that communication to a different agent that actually has access to your Jira. So you might restrict, almost like firewall certain agents from not having any access to your third-party data, or I'm sorry, your third-party systems or your internal systems. You might have any agent that's public-facing basically just gather the information and then pass it on to another agent. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to segment agents, not just from a functional perspective or data store or training perspective, but also potentially from a security or a user perspective. Another thing that we do at the agentic level is you have the ability to set up different access control. So, you can share an agent with anybody and they can access that agent via our product. So even an external person. So, some agents you might only have 1 or 2 people access, and some agents you might have that are public, right? Anybody can access through live chat or through email or whatever it might be. So, always understanding that when you're deploying agents, also thinking about role-based access security in that as well. So if you intend to build an agent that you are going to expose to a larger audience, make sure that you think about your setup and your role-based access to that. So, but these are all been great questions. I appreciate. I've gone way long here, so I know we started off a little bit clunky. I hopefully didn't ruin it, but hey, it's we go live. That's what happens. But just in conclusion, I appreciate everybody coming online. I was not expecting over 150 people. That's been great. That's what kind of caused a lot of the issues early on. Was there was just a lot of people joining that I wasn't expecting that many. But we will continue to have these. Ask me anythings. Obviously, at any point in time, you can email us at support@raiaai.com. Obviously, if you're a customer, we definitely encourage you to do that if you run into a brick wall. But I think what I wanted to just summarize is the power of centralizing a lot of what we're doing. And I know we're a decentralized entity, and everybody has to make their own decisions on how they want to deploy AI and move forward. But kind of what our vision here at Raia is, and our team, and what we're passionate about, is building the best possible product for CSI and to be used by CSI. We're not the only product you're going to use. You're going to use tools. You're going to use other products. We get that. But when you're thinking about deploying agents, and when you're thinking about finding ways to be more productive, or thinking about experimenting with how you can build agents and expand the power of AI into your team, have more control, have more capabilities internally in your BU, and maybe even exposing this eventually to your customer, whether it be automating support or helping with sales or even helping with your product. This is where we really want you to engage, and hopefully you can start to see something in the things that we're showing you that clicks and goes, oh, okay, I could see a use case where we could build an agent that ties into this application that could really help so-and-so automate this process that takes them this much time every day. And if we could get rid of that or get that off their plate, boy, this person could really dedicate more time to X. Like, honestly, that's the story that we'd love to tell, is that we're trying to make your team more efficient. We're trying to automate things that allow your team to have more time to innovate, to build, spend time with customers. And agents do a great job of that, right? And where tools are a great place where you can experiment, you can expand, you can be more productive, and you can start to really see what AI can do from a productivity, from a workplace perspective. Take that and extrapolate and think about how you can apply some of the cool stuff your team is working on and make it into an agent. And hopefully you'll consider our platform as a way to do that. And again, us being an insider and us helping you, we're more than happy to get any sort of advice or any sort of feedback on what you want to see next on our product. Most of the functionality you saw today is is not just the work of our team here, but it's the work of all the conversations that we've had with CSI companies across all the operating groups, Topicus, across the world. So this has become a very a big project, for hundreds of companies within CSI that want to see us build an agentic workforce and have ownership and have control over our future. And I think this hopefully that resonated today in today's demo. All right. Well, I'll probably be doing this in the next couple of weeks again. So please feel free if you have anybody on your team that wants to experiment with it, get them a license, have them play around, encourage them to come to one of our sessions, watch videos. You'll learn something. Even if you don't use raia, you will learn what we've been, obviously spend our day-to-day doing. And I will share all these links with you guys as well in an email and a follow-up. Have a great day. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. We're going to record this. We'll put the video on our YouTube. I'll share that in email as well. And please encourage anybody and everybody from your portfolio, your business unit, to learn more about it and to participate in the next session. Thanks, guys.